Hello, yes, I think we're live. Welcome to the fourth Facebook Live with me, Siobhan Miller from the Positive Birth Company. So hopefully we are all good this time. We've had only one time where it went very wrong and I was showing us all kinds of upside down, sideways. So I'm hoping it's all good today. So today's topic is due dates. Now I have a little disclaimer to state at the beginning, which is quite important. I put a shout out on Instagram earlier asking people for their questions if they had any about due dates. And some people have quite specific questions about medical, Charlotte, medical concerns and then induction. And I'm not a medical professional in the sense that I'm not a doctor, so I'm not qualified to be able to give advice as to, if you've got a medical condition and you've been offered an induction, I can't advise on that or say whether or not you should go for that. I can signpost you in the direction of places where you can get evidence-based information which could help you make your decision. I also teach a framework to help you again make informed choices, which I'll talk about in this Facebook Live session. But I can't, not because I don't want to help you, but it's not my place to advise when there are medical concerns. My main aim for doing this live about due dates is from a mental health perspective, which is something that I, do know about, is having a due date, becoming fixated on a due date, counting down to a due date can be very damaging, for your mental well-being really, because, everybody does it. We get given this due date, we get so excited about the due date and we count down to it as if it's some kind of like definite, when actually only between 3 and 5% of babies, depends which study you read, actually are born on their due dates, which means there's a whopping 95 to 97% chance that your baby's not going to come on that day, which is a huge chance of feeling disappointed, at best disappointed, at worst feeling really down and feeling quite desperate and anxious about why your baby's not coming. So that's why I think it's very important to talk about due dates. I can share what I know about due dates with some stats and get into the right headspace where we can kind of think of a due period rather than a due date. And I think that will help you feel better as you approach, and indeed if you go past that estimated due date, that you actually feel more confident and happier with it. And the affirmation that I always say is, my baby will come when my baby is ready. And it really is, that's a really good affirmation. Your baby will come when your baby is ready. So lots of questions. And some are coming up, and I've got some on this phone from earlier when I did the post. So yeah, I'm going to dive straight on in. I'm going to, I don't know where to begin actually, there's so many questions. So some of the things that came up, I'm just looking at the phone earlier from the Instagram post. Obviously there's a lot of recurrent themes with people's questions. So I'm hoping by answering some of these, it will answer ones for those watching as well. And obviously I'm going to refer to your questions too. So a lot of people saying that one of the things that makes them feel stressed is not themselves, but well-meaning friends and family texting and saying, when's the baby coming? Or somebody's written on Instagram that someone said, still waddling about then. And obviously that is not something that you want to hear. So in my classes, when I talk about due date and due date related stress, I talk about how you want to get rid of all stress, not just due date, you want to get rid of all stress around your due period, because being stressed will prevent you from going to labour, whereas being relaxed, producing oxytocin, that means you're more likely to go into spontaneous labour. So it is all about the relaxation. So when it comes to due dates, I've identified 3 sources of stress. And the first one is well-meaning friends and family. And a lot of people on Instagram agreed with that. People texting and asking. One lady said there's like 6 people a day asking her if her baby's come. And obviously that makes you feel quite stressed and annoyed and frustrated if indeed your baby hasn't come. So my tip for that is either to kind of be straight up with people and say, look, I'll let you know when the baby's come, I promise. Like, mum, I won't forget to tell you. I always say that. It's often mums and family members. It's like, I'll definitely tell you when the baby's been born. So have a frank conversation and say, please don't text me. I actually find it quite stressful. Or if you are able to, little tiny white lie, you could say that you'd had another scan and the due date had been moved. And it's not uncommon for due dates to change. You might have experience of that. You might have been given a few different dates already. So you could always say to kind of friends and family that your due date you'd got a new one and it was 2 weeks later, which might give you a little bit of breathing space. The second source of stress that I've identified around due dates is medical professionals. So when you go to your midwife appointment, them starting to talk about induction. Now, it really varies from place to place. Some midwives will just talk to you about induction and say, if you're still pregnant next week, I'll talk to you about it more. Whereas I have heard in some places that when people go for their 40-week midwife appointment, that they're actually given a date for induction at that appointment for, a prospective date, so like 12 days time, and then they go and put it in their diary. And I would say if there's nothing wrong and you are enjoying an uncomplicated pregnancy and you are well and you are considered low risk and you're just being given a date at your 40-week appointment, don't put that in your diary. The minute you write that date in your diary, even if it's like 12 days away, you've put that date in your diary as something that you're not looking forward to. So then you're going to start to feel stressed and you're going to start to think, 10 days, I've got 10 days and I'm going to be induced if I don't go into labour. 3 days, if I don't go into labour in 3 days, I'm going to be induced. And it's just this cycle of anxiety. And it's that will stop you going into labour. And then it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy where you get so stressed about not wanting to be induced. That's going to be the reason you end up being induced, because when you're producing cortisol, your body just picks up on that stress hormone and then it's just going to hold your baby in, thinking this is not the right environment to birth your baby. Because your body is very clever, but it can't differentiate between a perceived threat and a real threat. So if you're producing cortisol, the stress hormone, because you're stressed about this prospective induction date, your body just picks up on that hormone and thinks, going to hold that baby in because it's not safe. It doesn't know that actually it would be better to go into labour because there isn't a real threat. You're just stressing about a date in your diary. So if it's possible, just say to your midwife, it's brought up at your 40-week appointment, if all is well, just say, I'd rather not accept this, booking this date, and actually can we talk about it, next week if indeed I am still pregnant at my 41-week appointment. And just defer it because you don't need the date in your diary. And don't for a minute think that if you decline induction, that means at a later date you then can't have one because you've lost out now. When inductions are necessary, you can have one 365 days a year, 24/7. So by declining an induction at your 40-week appointment for a prospective date, 2 weeks down the line, if you then need one at 41 weeks for some separate reason, you absolutely will be able to have one. So that can give you a bit of breathing space again. And then the third source of stress, the final sort of source of stress, is from yourself psychologically, counting down to this due date that you get given and thinking, this is the date. You see everybody on social media, counting down 2 weeks left, 1 week left, and then it gets to the date and the vast majority of babies are born after their due date. So that means the vast majority of women will go past that date and then you start to get stressed. We use words late as soon as you're 1 day past your due date, late, 1 day late, overdue. These have all got very negative connotations. People don't enjoy being late. Overdue sounds a bit like overripe, it doesn't sound like a positive thing. And so, of course, you're getting very stressed about it. And then you see people on social media, these women that have been counting down to their estimated due date, and then the posts become increasingly frustrated, like, oh, the baby's 5 days late. And of course, it's completely understandable, but obviously you're getting stressed about it because you fixated on this due date, which is actually an estimated due date. So that's why I think it's better if you can kind of reframe that due date in your mind to think of it as a due period. So the World Health Organization say your due period is between 37 and 42 weeks. So that's a 5-week window in which a baby is perfectly within its due period. A baby between 37 weeks gestation and 40 weeks is not considered premature, and a baby between 40 weeks and 42 weeks shouldn't be considered overdue. That's perfectly within the due period. So if you're watching this and you're 41 weeks pregnant, you're not a week late, you are just perfectly within your due period. And I think that, we're fine with accepting that babies between 37 weeks and 42 weeks aren't premature. We're happy to accept that that is a full-term baby. But as soon as it becomes a day past the estimated due date, we're late. We refer to ourselves as being late. And actually, we need to understand that you're still perfectly within your due period right up until 42 weeks. So when I teach in class, I say it's impossible to get you to forget that estimated due date. You've probably all written it in your calendar as soon as you had that 12-week scan and you got given that date, you probably wrote it in your diary and it's been in your head ever since. So I can't ask you to forget that date. That's not realistic. But what I can ask you to do is just try and change one little word when you talk or think about that date. And that little word is changing it from by to from. So instead of saying my baby's going to be born by this estimated due date, like it's some kind of deadline, talk about my baby's likely to be born from that date. And therefore, as you approach that date, instead of it feeling like a deadline and your baby needs to be born by that deadline, you can approach that date thinking it's really exciting because when I get to this date, any day from now, my baby's likely to come. And it just lifts that stress, that expectation that the baby's going to be born by the due date. Now, if your baby does come before the due date, then it's a happy bonus. And I would say obviously prepare for that and have your birth bag packed and, everything that you need to prepare for a baby, have that ready. And if the baby comes before that estimated due date, between 37 weeks and 42 weeks, then hopefully you'll be prepared and that will be a wonderful surprise. Less waiting. But if you reach 40 weeks, think any time from now, my baby can come and I'm perfectly within my due period. So hoping just to sort of lift that stress around due dates. And some other statistics which might help you kind of put things into perspective is that it's around 85% of babies in the UK are born from 40 weeks onwards, which means only 15% are born prior to 40 weeks. The other little statistic, if you're a first-time mum, the average first-time mum in the UK gives birth at 40 weeks plus 10 days, or you could say 41 weeks plus 4 days. That's the average first-time mum gives birth at 40 weeks plus 10 days. So you are not alone if you have gone past this estimated due date. In fact, you're with the majority. There is nothing wrong with you or your baby. And that's what I really want to get across. And using that affirmation, my baby comes, my baby is ready. If your baby is staying in there longer and growing and developing, then, trust that your baby and your body and everything knows what to do. And you're doing a great job. You're doing a great job of carrying your baby. So I've talked a lot. I could talk about this subject for quite a long time. Two other things that I will say that's quite important is that if you're, so the most common reason, first of all, for inductions being offered, and about 35% of labours are induced in the UK, so 1 in 3 women are induced. The most common reason for induction is dates, so that's why it's very important to talk about due dates and obviously the link with then induction being offered. If you're being offered induction because you've got a medical concern, so something like gestational diabetes or preeclampsia, or other a whole multitude of reasons why you might be offered inductions not to do with dates. So if there's a clinically justified reason, that's a separate issue, and I would really recommend that you look at the NICE guidelines. So not nice as in friendly nice, the National Institute of Clinical Excellence, the guidelines. You can Google them, literally Google NICE guidelines, and then you might Google gestational diabetes induction, and you can actually see the latest studies and the statement from the NICE guidelines. We actually have a statement on what the latest up-to-date guidelines are, and they're all evidence-based and links to the studies that support those guidelines. So if you're being told something by a doctor or midwife and you want to kind of understand why you're being offered that, or indeed if that is what the latest guidelines suggest, you can just Google those NICE guidelines yourself. I think it's really important, to understand why you're being offered induction. And indeed, on the NICE guidelines, it says that there needs to be a clear, clinically justified reason. So if you're being offered induction, you need to understand what that clear clinical justification is. And hopefully, between speaking to your healthcare professionals and looking up at the NICE guidelines, you'll hopefully have a better idea of why that's being offered, and indeed if you want to accept. And that leads on to my second point about how do you make that decision. I teach this framework called BRAIN, use your brain, and the letters stand for benefits, risks, alternatives, instinct, and nothing. And I won't go into that right now because I don't want to waste all of our time talking about that, and that's a sort of slightly different thing. But I will say that I've made a video on YouTube. It's a free video all about that, using your brain and making informed decisions. So I'll link to it below this when we finish. And I would really recommend going to watch that free video on YouTube about how to make informed decisions. So hopefully that will help. The NICE guidelines, I'll link to that below, and also using your brain to be able to make those informed decisions. Right. Questions. Let me get to the questions. Okay. Hi, Kelly. So Kelly said, I read these guidelines after your recommendation. I feel so informed now in comparison to my first pregnancy. I'm so glad you bring this to our attention. Okay, that's great. Thank you, Kelly. I think making sure that you're informed is so important. One, because you're meant to be giving informed consent in hospitals, for any given procedure. So making sure that you're informed is really important. Knowing the questions to ask, knowing that you can say no as well as saying yes. A lot of people say, am I allowed to do this? Will they let me go over this date? Or my hospital don't let that happen. You're allowed to do what you want. It is your body. It is your baby. It is your birth, and it is your choice. And you have full autonomy over all of those things, and you can make your own decisions. So if somebody says to you, we don't allow you to go past 41 weeks in this hospital, what are they going to do? They can't come and get you from your house. That's just really, horrible language to be using. Actually, what they mean to say is our guidelines or our recommendation would be to have an induction at this point. And that's how they should say it. Our recommendation is this, because that's all it ever is a recommendation. And you, as the woman who's pregnant, can take that recommendation, do your own research, and then decide whether or not you want to indeed go with that recommendation because it sounds like a good idea, or indeed actually if there's a different way that you'd like to do it which would suit you better. So you are allowed to do what you want. It is your body, it is your birth, it is your baby. And if you want to continue your pregnancy and wait to go into labour spontaneously, I'm not recommending that you do that because I don't know what your medical issues are, but I'm saying that you are allowed to. So you need to make that decision. Going through the process of making that decision will hopefully help you to feel empowered, whichever decision you decide. So if you decline or if you accept, you feel empowered that you made that decision. And that's quite important from, a mental health, well-being sort of point of view, that you feel empowered by your choices and you don't just feel things happen to you and you had no control. Okay, so Victoria, hello. My home birth team booked me in for induction at 12 days past my estimated due date. Is it advisable to have it 2 days later? Again, I can't decide, with regards to that, what date you book in for an induction. Up until 42 weeks, you're perfectly within your due period. The NHS likes babies to be born by 42 weeks, so that end of that due period. And so like your home birth team have said 12 days. But if you wanted to wait till 14 days, that's completely your choice. And obviously you've got to take into account other factors. Do you have any risk factors? Is there any other reason why you've been offered an induction, or is it purely dates? If it's purely dates and you are well and your baby's well, you can always opt for additional monitoring instead of an induction if that would be preferable for you. And then that kind of going back to that framework about using your brain, benefits, risks, alternatives, instinct, nothing. the alternatives, always ask what are the alternatives, because there often are alternatives, and that means you've got choices, and you've always got choices. So you can always opt for an induction or to have increased antenatal monitoring. So even if you get to 42 weeks, you don't have to be induced. You could always say, I'd like to have increased monitoring and wait till I go into labour spontaneously. It is always your choice, but obviously I'd encourage you to make sure you're making that informed decision. So that will be unique to every individual. What are the benefits? What are the risks? Your risk factors might be different to another woman's. What are the alternatives? Instinct, what feels right for me as an individual? And using all of that to help you make your decision. I hope that helps. Hi, I've never heard of NICE guidelines before this course. Why this source of information is not given at hospitals as standard, for example, in cases like pregnancy. It's going quickly. When you have plenty of time to go through it. Why is this source? I feel like midwives have a very difficult time because most people see their midwife and they've got, in clinic, and they've got back-to-back appointments all day. So there's probably loads that midwives would love to talk to you about, but they're under, huge amounts of pressure to see X number of people in a day. And so you've got like 5-10 minutes with your midwife, and then it's, the next person in. So I feel like it's not anybody's fault as such. It's just that everybody in the NHS is hugely stretched. So you just don't get all the information that you should get. So it's difficult because women are meant to be making informed decisions, but then they're not getting the information. So then you have to know to go and look for it elsewhere. But hopefully now that you know about the NICE guidelines, you can use them to your advantage and go and read up and find out what the latest guidelines are. And they're all evidence-based guidelines. And as new research comes through, those guidelines get updated. If you've just joined, I'm talking about the NICE guidelines, the National Institute of Clinical Excellence. You can Google their guidelines for anything relating to your pregnancy. And as the new evidence comes through, the guidelines get updated, and then that should reflect in the practice that's happening within NHS trusts. And hopefully the majority of the time, what you're being told by your midwife and doctor is compatible with what the latest guidelines say. But I have heard of examples of people being told things that don't match what the guidelines say. So actually, informing yourself and arming yourself with knowledge from these NICE guidelines allows you to be able to challenge what you're being told and say, I read the guidelines and the guidelines actually say this. A good example of that is people worrying about going past their due date and the baby getting big and being too big. And I hear a lot of the time people being offered inductions and being told by medical professionals that, kind of coerced into an induction because the baby might get too big. And there is no evidence to say that would be a problem. In the NICE guidelines, it states quite clearly that inductions shouldn't be offered for size alone, even based on scans. Scans are very inaccurate, especially towards the end of pregnancy. So, even if you have a scan, it's not accurate. So it does state in the NICE guidelines that if it's just on the baby size alone and there's no other risk factors, women shouldn't be induced for that. So, if you're being told different, then there's an example of where the guidelines aren't matching up with what you're being told. So do make sure that you're informed and you're not just taking the first thing that you're being told and trusting people implicitly. Retain that responsibility, your body, your birth, your baby, your decision, always your decision. Make sure you get all the information you need to make that informed decision. Use the NICE guidelines, ask to speak to a supervisor of midwives, get a second opinion, use your brain, that acronym, to ask all the right questions. And hopefully in that way you're kind of having that personal responsibility and being able to process the options available. Rachel says, I've told people a later due date than the one we were given. That's a really good idea. It just gives you some breathing space, I think. And even if you just say to someone you've had a scan and they've changed the due date by like a week or two, it just gives you a bit more, breathing space. Hi, Vanessa. Vanessa says, I'm 36 plus 5 and feeling the baby really low and having some surges, trying to finish the digital pack. But if I don't have time to, it has already done so much for me. I'm feeling so informed and positive. Oh, thank you. Thank you. The digital pack, I'm just so happy that everyone's loving the digital pack. If you're watching and you don't know what this digital pack is, it's the full hypnobirthing course in video format. It's £35. and you get the whole course. There's 43 videos, MP3s to download, a birth preferences template, which someone messaged me today actually and said that their midwife, they took the birth preferences template and the midwife said it was the best one she'd seen and that it was so concise, and the midwife even said to the woman that she wished she would be at her birth because it sounded so lovely. So you get that. You also get a course notes booklet and then access to the private Facebook community. So not this public page, but a private community for ongoing support, which is really quite an incredible supportive community. So that's the digital pack. You can find that on the website if you're interested. But I also have a whole series of free videos on YouTube. So if you're not interested in the digital pack or you don't want to spend any money, completely respect that. You can access all the free videos on YouTube. So YouTube, obviously, youtube.com /The Positive Birth Company. And there's 11 videos on there covering all the key kind of breathing techniques, using your brain. There's one on that, the role of the birth partner. So do go and check those out as well. What are your thoughts on attempting to induce labour naturally? Things like clary sage oil, reflexology, etc. So that's Gemma. So there's obviously a lot of stuff out there about how to bring on labour naturally. From those things you've talked about, obviously reflexology, acupuncture, but also things like eating hot curries. And there's not a lot of evidence, especially for I'm not putting eating hot curries in the same bracket as reflexology, acupuncture, because actually that's got some value. Eating hot curries isn't going to get you into labour. I can state that. A hot curry will not get you into labour. If hot curries were that effective, women would be warned not to eat hot curries in pregnancy. You're told not to eat egg, with a dippy egg, or to avoid pate. You're told to avoid all these things. No one's ever told to avoid hot curries or spicy food, because spicy food is not going to get you into labour. There's other things. What other things? Pineapple. Apparently, there's something in the husky centre of the pineapple, but you'd have to eat loads of it, and it's the horrible bit in the middle, not the soft rings around the outside. And so I think people that are necking pineapple juice, there's no evidence for that. So a lot of those things, they're not going to do any harm, but they're probably not going to start your labour. There's also one that used to be around castor oil, to drink some castor oil, but castor oil just gives you the runs. So again, unlikely to work, but if you did go into labour, you're going to be in labour and having diarrhoea, which is probably not what anyone wants. So I would, actively encourage you to avoid things like that. But things like acupuncture, reflexology, there is some evidence for that. And I had acupuncture with my two little ones. After a certain time, there's points within the body that are points that relate to the cervix. I don't know enough about Chinese medicine to be able to explain how it works or how it's meant to work. And I don't even know if it did work for me. I mean, I went into labour spontaneously, but whether that's down to the acupuncture or down to my body, I'm not totally sure. But on those sessions I had acupuncture, I found them hugely relaxing. So I think that anything that helps you to relax is going to help you go into labour, because it's oxytocin, and that's the only thing that actually has some science behind it. If you produce oxytocin, that's your feel-good hormone, that will get your labour started. If you're induced in hospital, you're given a synthetic version of oxytocin. So that really is the magic stuff. And you produce that when you're relaxed and when you feel good. So anything that helps you to relax around your due period, from a sort of scientific point of view, that gets you to produce oxytocin is going to be helpful. So if that's relaxing and watching something like Love Island and having a cuddle, that can be the thing. If you like reflexology, if you like going for a pregnancy massage, if you like acupuncture, then besides the kind of the Chinese medicine the reasons why it might work for that, actually it might work because it helps you to relax. So anything that helps you to relax can help you with labour. Nipple stimulation, if you're having some gentle surges and you want things to get established, if you stimulating your nipples, that will get oxytocin going. So anything that gets oxytocin going actually has some sort of science behind it. Other things that you might have heard, less so. Okay, just going down here. I feel there is a threat to my baby due to group B strep and pushy mother-in-law. Any tips on how to relax about this and hopefully have a natural birth? So with group B strep, that's once your waters have gone, there's a risk of that infection travelling to the baby. But whilst you're pregnant, that's not going to go to the baby, so that's fine. And pushy mother-in-law, difficult. It's awkward when it's like family politics. How to relax? Maybe say that you've had another scan and that it's been changed to 2 weeks later, so you can just sort of give yourself some breathing space. But you're not quite clear there, Kelly. You feel maybe under pressure. I'm kind of reading between the lines, but if you feel under pressure to accept an induction, for example, a mother-in-law or whatever reason, understand that actually having an induction carries its own risks. So it's a case of weighing up the risks of induction against the risk of continuing the pregnancy. And so if you're being sort of pushed into an induction, you have to understand the reasons why. Do the benefits of ending the pregnancy outweigh the risks of induction? Because induction is not just a straightforward thing that is without any risks. And indeed, going back to those nice guidelines, they acknowledge the risk, and they say that statistically, you're more at risk of having intervention, assisted delivery, needing an epidural. It says that it makes a significant impact on the birth experience for mum and baby. So if people are pushing you to have an induction when you don't have any real need to have one, you need to let people know that actually having an induction is taking on additional risks. And if there's no reason to do that, then that doesn't make any sense to do that. And I think some people just don't know that. They think that induction is just an easy way to kind of get your baby sooner. So they're thinking, why would you not have that? But actually, once you understand the risks that are associated with induction, then you can kind of weigh that up, and sometimes perhaps it's not worth it. And then other times it might be a very sensible thing to do. For example, if your waters have broken, 48 hours has elapsed, you've not gone into labour, your baby's now open to infection, travelling up because the waters aren't protecting the baby anymore, that's a really good reason to accept induction, because obviously the benefits of having the induction outweigh the risks of continuing the pregnancy. But if you're 41 weeks and 3 days and you're well, you and baby are well, you're low risk, and there's no reason to have an induction, then you might look into that and feel more confident of actually, pushing that back and deferring that a little bit. Morgan, hello Morgan. As a midwife, I've really enjoyed your digital package. You explain things so clearly and well, and plenty of women have told me they've enjoyed the pack. That's amazing. I love hearing from midwives saying they're enjoying the pack because they're the professionals. So I'm like, that's great, thank you. What is the relation between the length of your period cycles and your due date? Is there any correlation? I actually don't know this, but I'm really interested in this. That's a really great question. I actually don't know of any studies. Doesn't mean that there aren't any. I just don't know of them that make a link between your normal menstrual cycle and how many weeks you carry your baby for. But I think it's really interesting because we don't expect everybody to ovulate at the same time and have the same cycles. Some women, the kind of average cycle is meant to be 28 days, I think, but some women will have shorter cycles and some women will have significantly longer cycles. So I think all of that would suggest that we shouldn't expect women to carry their babies for the same amount of time. And indeed, it's thought that women tend to have kind of a gestation period for themselves. So if you have more than one baby, 2 babies, 3 babies, women tend to fall into a pattern where they have their babies around the same time. So some women might always have their babies around 38 weeks, whereas some women might always have their babies around 42 weeks. We have natural gestation cycles, and there is evidence for that. So I can only assume that it must relate somehow. I'm not sure how your period relates to pregnancy, but I think it would be kind of common sense to assume that we have different cycles, whether that's a menstrual cycle or, pregnancy. I also just think that we get so fixated on this due date. Sometimes it's worth kind of thinking how the due date even came about. I talk about this in class as well. You first of all, they date your pregnancy from the first date of your last period. So, by the time you've missed your period, whereby perhaps you're, 5 weeks since you last had a period, that's considered as 5 weeks pregnant, which I always think is kind of strange because presumably you weren't actually pregnant when you were having your period. So I think that's kind of strange. And then you get your 12-week scan, obviously, and a sonographer measures your baby by kind of putting a mouse there, dragging and dropping there, measuring the number of millimetres, going to a standardised chart and saying, okay, you're 11 weeks and 4 days, therefore your estimated due date is this exact date. And if you break it down, okay, a sonographer is using a kind of a mouse, a drag and drop technique. Presumably, if you got 10 different sonographers, they'd get slightly different measurements. The baby moves around inside as well. So you'd get slightly different measurements, and all it takes is to be a few millimetres out, and then that corresponds to a completely different date. And I've known people who have had, maybe 2 scans in an afternoon because perhaps the baby wasn't in a good position, so they've asked them to go away and come back, and they've had the same scan by the same sonographer on the same day, and they're given a different due date. It changes, there's variance. And then also, of course, once they've measured, they go to a standardised chart. That's a standardised chart. That if a baby is a certain number of millimetres, that can't mean every single human in this world baby measures the same amount of millimetres at the exact same number of weeks, because we're all different sizes, we have different diets. I mean, there's just so many environmental factors, genetics. If a man and a woman are having a baby and they're really tall, then surely the baby doesn't measure the same amount of millimetres at 12 weeks as somebody who's, shorter. It doesn't make any sense. It's just a standard chart. It's just an estimated due date. And then we get so fixated on that due date, but actually it really is just a guess. And in the UK, that guess is 40 weeks around then. And in France, it's 41 weeks. So there's not even a European agreement as to when that due date is. So when you think about it, it doesn't make sense to fixate on that day. The chances of the baby coming on that day are very slim. And then apart from all of that, of kind of measuring the baby, so the room for the margin of error there, and then using a standard chart, which obviously is not a one-size-fits-all. Apart from that, even if you knew the exact date of conception, even if you knew and you could tell 100% that 40 weeks deadline is definitely that date, you felt really confident you knew that, it still doesn't mean the baby's going to come on that day, because your body doesn't have some natural ejection reflex where some alarm goes off at 40 weeks and the body's like, right, out now. There's so many factors. Your cervix has to change. They call it ripening. You have to be producing oxytocin, so you have to be relaxed. And then obviously the environment affects how relaxed you feel. So there's so many different factors that influence when you're going to go into labour, some to do with the environment, some to do with your baby, that even if you knew the 40-week day, even if you knew that was the 40-week date, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that that's when you're going to go into labour. Okay, reading some more of these. When should you start the digital pack, Liz? 8 days overdue and freaking. I think start the digital pack now. Now would be great. I think if you get the digital pack, start watching the videos tonight, you will feel better almost immediately. Lots of people have bought the digital pack when they've already gone past that estimated due date, and they have binge watched the videos and then reported back that it's helped them enormously. So I feel really confident that, Liz, if you get the digital pack today, start watching the videos, you will be freaking less by tonight. Also, I offer a 14-day money back guarantee. So if you watch it and you don't think it's any good, then you can get your money back. So there's really nothing to lose by giving the digital pack a go. Hi Sarah, I really believe due dates mean very little. I've had 2 spontaneous labours at 41 plus 4 and 37 plus 5. Baby comes when baby is ready. Love what you're doing, Siobhan. Digital pack was fab. Thank you, Sarah. That's really lovely to hear. And there we are. So 1 baby at 41 plus 4 and 1 baby at 37 plus 5. So no pattern there at all. And yeah, baby really does come when baby is ready. And we just have to trust that. It's really hard. Obviously, we plan our lives a lot and we want to know, but we just have to trust that our babies and our bodies, they know what they're doing. They're growing. Our bodies are growing this baby, okay? They're capable bodies, and they're going to be capable of birthing the baby as well. 41 plus 5 today. Hi, Hazel. Still hopeful baby will make will appear of his own accord before induction booked for Saturday, trying everything to induce naturally and stay positive no matter what happens. But I may just punch the next person to suggest a curry or long walk. Yeah, it gets frustrating. Anything that you can do to relax, Hazel, that's going to be the best thing for you right now, is just working on being relaxed, having nice baths, just really just relaxing, getting the oxytocin going. If you've got some MP3s, like listening to that, just really enjoying these final few days. And indeed, if you do go for an induction, everything that I cover on the digital pack, you can use all of that with an induction. In fact, there's a whole section on how to have a positive induction. So as much as I say, think carefully about whether you want to have an induction, if you do choose to have an induction, you can make that very, very positive. And all of what you learn when you do a hypnobirthing course can be used when having an induction. It's not either or. It's not hypnobirthing is for natural, spontaneous labours at home in a pool. Hypnobirthing is for everything. It's an antenatal it's an education, it's antenatal education. I'm falling over my words. It's a program of antenatal education. It's suitable for all births. And indeed, I think when birth is straightforward and there's no problems, then it's easy. When birth becomes challenging, and we're talking about induction and things like that, I think it's even more important, not less important, but more important to have done a course and to have tools that you can use. Practical tools that you can use to help you relax, but also tools that you can use to help you make informed decisions, knowing about the environment and how you can make that work for you, and just everything that you'll learn by doing a course. It can help you have an incredible positive birth with induction. And I've taught lots of women who have indeed had really, really positive induced labours. So hypnobirthing, whether with me, whether with a practitioner local to yourselves, whether online with a digital pack, free videos on YouTube, however you're going to do a course, I really, really recommend that you do, because it will help for all types of birth. Let me carry on. Lucia, so what are the risks of induction? So the risks of induction, they're outlined by the NICE guidelines. So you can go and Google, NICE guidelines with induction. But just off the top of my head, more increased risk of intervention and assisted delivery. So that's forceps or ventouse. Increased likelihood of needing an epidural, so anglesia. And also it acknowledges the significant impact to the birth experience of mother and baby. If you're having an induction with a drip, you can't have that in a birth centre, you can't have that at home, so you have to be on a labour ward, and even just being in a labour ward changes things. So if you're planning a natural birth, induction does increase the risks of needing assistance and things like that. But bearing in mind that makes sense, because if your body's ready and you go into labour spontaneously versus you're being given a drug to make your body go into labour when it's not ready, potentially, obviously that's going to take longer and, more likely to need help with that. But also, and something I talk about a lot, I know I'm kind of going on to induction, and perhaps I should do a separate Q&A about induction, but I guess kind of due dates and induction go hand in hand. Something I talk about a lot on the course when I'm teaching is that a lot of the things that happen with their induction are kind of circumstantial. So, we talk about there's a significant or there's an increased risk of needing assisted delivery, but it's like a knock-on effect. If you go into a labour ward to be induced and you're offered an epidural, and therefore you take that epidural, you are then more likely to be lying down on a bed. And by lying down and taking away gravity, that will then slow your labour down and increase the risk of needing assistance getting the baby out, because you don't have gravity on your side. So then you have to wonder, when it says induction increases the risks of A, B and C, is it the induction, or is it the things that happen because of the induction? And actually all of those things you have the power to do differently. And I say that to women all the time when I'm teaching, that just because you're having an induction doesn't mean you then have to be on a bed on your back, because all of those things will slow your labour down. So if you're going to have an induction, you make the environment work for you, you have it be in a good upright position, you use all your relaxation tools, and then you're producing oxytocin and you're working with the effective drug that you're being given, and therefore you've got, you know, a really good chance of being able to labour, you know, efficiently and birth your baby naturally as you want to. So there's a lot of things around induction that don't have to happen that way. Someone says she texts every day and says she'll wait at the hospital when I'm in labour. Oh, is this the mother-in-law? This is Kelly. I think this was the mother-in-law. Texts every day and says she'll wait at the hospital when I'm in labour. Don't tell her. Don't tell her when you're in labour. And you don't want that pressure. That's really, really difficult. Maybe your partner could have a word. Sorry. I feel like I'm holding the baby in because I'm worried about that as well as getting antibiotics in time. Okay, so, you know, if you've got fears like that, that's quite a specific one. It's really worth, one, acknowledging, recognising that fear. That's really helpful. And then being able to let that fear go. Because, yeah, exactly, your body will hold your baby in. Just like from personal experience, when I was pregnant, I finished work on a Friday, I think it was. And my mum came to stay for a few days, came up because, you know, it was my due sort of period. And while she was there in the house with me, it's stressful. I don't want to go into labour. I was planning a home birth. I mean, maybe some other people feel differently because their relationship is different with their mum, but certainly mine does not aid my relaxation, should we say it that way. And so I didn't go into labour, and then she left on a Wednesday. I went into labour on Thursday and had my baby. I don't think that's a coincidence. If you've got kind of factors in your environment that's making you feel stressed, your body will hold your baby in. So Kelly, recognising that that's happening and then finding a way to kind of let go of that fear, whether that's your partner having a word with your mother-in-law and saying, you know, not to text so frequently, that actually is causing quite a lot of stress, or just thinking, okay, the plan of action is I go into labour, I don't tell my mother-in-law, and then she won't know that I'm at the hospital. But, you know, kind of trying to alleviate that as much as possible. Hi, Melissa. I went to 42 weeks for my first baby. Will it be different this time? What's the likelihood of going over again? So, statistically, first-time babies tend to be later. So statistically, you're more likely to go into labour sooner this time round. But saying that, women do have natural gestation periods. So it might be, and this isn't fixed in stone, but it might be that your natural gestation period is 42 weeks. Your body and your babies take that long. That's the right time for them. So it's possible that could be the case, but equally, it's very possible that your baby could come sooner. I think probably just preparing psychologically that it could be 42 weeks will help you feel less, pressured and less stressed when you pass that estimated due date. Hi, about periods and cycles, I've answered that question. Someone is just giving some support. Laura saying, understands the pressure of RE mother-in-law. Why is 42 the cutoff? What's the evidence that after 42, after 42 weeks isn't good if no other clinical things? So after 43 weeks, there is an increase in stillbirth. That's the risk. So the risk of stillbirth increases after 43 weeks. We're still talking very, very low numbers after 43 weeks. But because of that increase, that's why the NHS want babies born by 42 weeks. However, when people are being offered inductions prior to 42 weeks, you're not at an increased risk if there are no other clinical reasons. Is it true that first-time mums are more likely to go over their due date or an old wives' tale? There is evidence for that. So statistically, first-time mums do carry their babies longer. I don't know for sure what the reason is, but I would suspect that it's because being anxious and fearful stops your body going into labour. And and this is just a guess, I would guess that first-time mums typically tend to probably have a bit more anxiety because they've never done it before. If you're more relaxed second time round because you've done it, therefore you're more relaxed and producing oxytocin. Okay. Hi Siobhan, this is Emma. I'm 40 plus 2 weeks, so 40 weeks plus 2 days. I have a midwife appointment tomorrow to discuss, and she's put next steps. This is my second pregnancy and I was 10 days overdue with my first. I really don't want to consider a sweeper induction, and that's totally fine. You do not need to consider a sweeper and induction because you're 2 days past an estimated due date. You're perfectly within your due period. Your first baby, you went to 10 days past that estimated due date. It's sensible to think that potentially that's going to be the same this time. might be sooner, but equally it could be the same, and you should not be under any pressure to have a sweep or an induction, or even need to talk about it. If it's raised, and you can say, you know what, I'd like to come back at around 41 weeks, I'll come back next week and discuss it then. You don't even need to, you know, be kind of pressured into having, you know, booking in appointments or anything. Just say you're perfectly happy and you're expecting your baby to come around, you know, 10 days past due date like the first one, and you don't want to book in for an induction or really explore that until, you know, later on if you're still pregnant. People talking about mother-in-law chat, could do a whole separate Facebook Live. Loving the digital pack made me and my husband feel very relaxed now. That's great. Paige, hi Paige. It's never too late to start the digital pack, guys. Best thing my partner and I ever did. I had my baby at 42 plus 1, and it was the most amazing experience of my life. So Paige's birth story is on the website. So if you go to thepositivebirthcompany.co.uk/blog, there are loads of positive birth stories there, and Paige, who's just commented, her story is there as well. She gave birth at 42 weeks plus 1 day, and she had an incredible water birth. She shared her story, so yeah, really, really inspiring. It's Chloe, 40 plus 14. I had so much faith in my body. I'm guessing that means you had your baby at 40 plus 14, so 42 weeks. Chloe, I think that is what you're saying. I had so much faith in my body thanks to going on the course. So we really do need to learn to trust our bodies and our babies. You know, they know what they're doing. They manage to grow the baby. You know, it is a perfectly designed system. Kelly, can you refuse an induction after 42 weeks if all is well with baby and you accept monitoring? Well, absolutely. I'm not advocating that that's what you should do. That'd be my disclaimer. I'm not advocating that people decline inductions once they get to 42 weeks, because like I said before, there is an increase in risk, you know, once you're past that due period. So you would need to kind of explore that and make the right decision for yourself. So I'm not advocating that, but absolutely, it is always your choice. You can refuse an induction. You can refuse an induction and you can accept monitoring. I mean, really, you could refuse monitoring. That wouldn't probably be sensible, but I'm saying you have the full freedom of choice. Just reiterate again, I get very nervous saying this, I'm not advocating that that's what you do once you get to 42 weeks. But if you wanted to, you absolutely have the right to continue your pregnancy and opt for additional monitoring. Nobody can ever take away, you know, your basic human rights. It is your body, your physical body, it is your baby, and it is your birth, and it is always your choice. And even that thought alone, I think, is quite empowering and hopefully helps you to feel confident that it's your choice. Hi Diana, amazing. The pack, cannot thank you enough. Have you heard about eating dates from 36 weeks to soften the cervix? Yes, I have. I think it's in the Middle East, women commonly eat dates. And there's been a study to show if you eat 6 dates a day from 36 weeks, the group in the study that did that did go into labour sooner and their labours were quicker. So there was some evidence. I have no idea why dates actually worked in that study. But yeah, there is some evidence for that. So don't know if it works in sticky toffee pudding. Would be interested to find out. But if you like dates, then there's no harm in eating dates. And the study was 6 dates a day, I think, from 36 weeks. Hi, Amy. Helpful video. Great. I'm really glad you're all liking it. I think I've been chatting for quite a long time. Yeah. Oh, nearly an hour. It was meant to be half an hour. Okay. I could talk about this a lot. I hope that this live session has been helpful, and I've answered the majority of your questions. I hope there is a lot, so I hope that it's been helpful. Just to recap the things that you can do if you're pregnant and you're watching this. So if you go to my YouTube channel, that's the Positive Birth Company on YouTube, you'll find a series of 11 videos. They're completely free. Each video is like 4 minutes long. So definitely, if you can, go and watch those. They will really help you and just give you some kind of basic techniques like breathing technique, which alone is a game changer for birth. If you're interested in learning more, then there's the digital pack. And again, you can find that on my website, which is thepositivebirthcompany.co.uk. Access the digital pack that way. It's a fully comprehensive hypnobirthing course online in video format. You get MP3s to download, a course notes booklet, a birth preferences template, and ongoing support in a private Facebook community. That's just £35. And then, of course, I teach as well in-person classes in London, Devon and Birmingham. So again, all of those upcoming dates and availability are on the website at thepositivebirthcompany.co.uk. And if you want positive birth stories, because you're watching this and you're past your due date perhaps, and you want some reassurance and inspiration, then it's thepositivebirthcompany.co.uk/blog. Just /blog, and you'll get to all of these amazing positive birth stories, and hopefully they'll help you feel more confident and reassured. The best thing you can do for yourself to go into labour naturally is to be relaxed. So get working on producing all that lovely oxytocin. And how people relax, you might use your toolkit, your hypnobirthing toolkit and the techniques I teach, but equally you've probably conditioned yourself to associate a whole multitude of things with relaxation. For me, it's like slippers and a cup of tea. All of that helps me to relax. Candles. So, whatever it is that helps you to relax, do that, and if you've gone past that estimated due date, remember that's all it is. It's just an estimate. Your baby is going to come when your baby is ready, and enjoy these final days. And if you're a first-time mum, enjoy the freedom of being spontaneous. And if you are a second or third-time mum, just enjoy these last days with your children, because very soon your baby's going to come and life is going to change and it's going to be amazing. But really just enjoy these last few days. And if you can, do nice things. Don't not book anything in because you think, oh, I don't want to book anything past 40 weeks because the baby might come. Obviously, don't book anything like you won't get your money back on or anything like that. But make arrangements to see people, or to go swimming, or to go and get your nails done, or whatever it is. And worst case scenario, you cancel on a friend meeting for coffee because you've gone into labour. But that's a pretty good excuse. But yeah, don't just sit at home. That will make it really hard. If you're just sat at home past 40 weeks waiting every day because you kept your diary clear because you thought your baby was going to come, that could feel like a really long 2 weeks. So make plans to do nice things, and hopefully then the time will pass quicker, and really soon you're going to be holding your baby in your arms. So think about that, visualise that, a beautiful newborn baby. Okay, hopefully I've answered most of your questions. Thank you so much for tuning in. I aim to do one of these every few weeks, so I'll think of another topic. If you've got any ideas for topics, then let me know, because we can do any topic really we can cover. One last thing, on the website you can get yourself a free positive affirmations MP3. I talk about using positive affirmations a lot. My baby comes, my baby is ready. You can get a free MP3 that you can download, put it on your phone, and it's just positive affirmations to listen to, which hopefully will help you feel more confident. And to get that free MP3, you just need to go to thepositivebirthcompany.co.uk, scroll to the bottom of the homepage, and then there's a big box saying subscribe. And if you subscribe there, you will be sent 24 hours later a link to download that MP3 for free. And also you can subscribe there to the newsletter, and that's just a weekly newsletter with a kind of roundup of positive birth stories and things that are there to help you feel informed, empowered and excited to meet your baby. So thank you for tuning in. I'm going to say bye now. Thank you very much, and I hope it's been helpful. And thanks. Bye.